Good morning, everyone. It's about 20 after 3 a.m. GMT time on June 8th when I started recording. So we're going to take a look at pound CAD first. As you can see, I have a fib from the daily chart. This is from last month's low to this month's high. And if we take a look, my preferred pullback area, if we continue to drop down, is going to be in the conjunction of the superconvergence zones, the daily 55, and the 4-hour 200, where I'll look for support too long. However, we may not get down there. Potentially, we could find support about right where we are now. You see, we've already started to move up a little bit. So I will also look in the shorter term for support to form in the roughly 189.60 to 189.80 area. That's been kind of the bottom of the range most recently, and also several months back that's been a good support and resistance area. You can see back here just a couple weeks ago it was a little bit lower than that, but I think if we do move below basically 89.60, we're likely to come down into the range of the daily 55. So those are my two options. Earlier in the week, depending on what it's looking like, I'll look for support to form closer up to where price is currently. If it looks like we're getting some more downward pressure, I will look for buyers to re-enter right around the daily 55. All right, if we take a look at pound AUD, this chart looks a little bit cleaner than pound CAD, so I'll probably prefer to trade this pair out of the pound versus kind of the commodity basket. So I'm going to look for a pullback in the range of the lower 4-hour Dynafib and the 4-hour 200. Look for support in that area for a long position. Where we're at right now is a pretty tough area to break on the weekly. That's our high on the weekly. If we take a look there, you can see that we are kind of right around there now. We're just above it, but we haven't really had a solid sustained break above that area yet. That was also the top of our triangle. If we take a look at the daily, you can see that we're not too far above it. So this important area, of course, is going to be 2. So if we do get a push up above this superconvergence zone here, up to WR1 or the midterm fib, I'll look for a pullback into 2, and then a bounce off for a long. So those are the two options that I'm looking at for the pound AUD this week. Okay, let's take a look at pound JPY. We continued to move up last week, and I have this superconvergence zone here, which is starting to get a little bit stronger, but this goes all the way back to the beginning of time for me, for the data that I have, which I don't have a really lengthy data for this pair for some reason on FinFX. So I'm not sure that this superconvergence zone up here should really be as strong as it is. It's a little bit weird. It's the only superconvergence zone that I have. It's just dots all the way across the time horizon on the monthly. So I'm not exactly sure what's up with that. However, on the weekly, our high on the weekly at 189.70. Back here, the high there is 189.70 before we turned around. So that makes where we're at now pretty significant. We're a little bit above that 191.40. You can see. So basically, what I want to see is a move down to the 4-hour 55 for a long. The 4 hours been pretty good support. We have pushed below it, but then very shortly moved back above it. So I'll be looking for that same sort of pattern here. I will take support all the way down to 189.50 If we do push below that, I'll be a little bit leery to then take a long if we find support, say, in the 4-hour Dynafibs. I'd prefer to wait until we got closer to the 200 or the daily 55, as we were at price levels where we are now. The last time we reversed pretty quickly, and that's the case on a lot of pairs. We're at pretty pivotal levels, so we'll have to see basically what the majors and the major asset classes like commodities are going to be doing for the week to see if we're going to be able to drive these prices higher. Okay, pound USD, I've fibbed the last 2 weeks high to low here, so preference is for a short, but the zone here is a little bit out of sync, I think, with the recent price action, because what I would prefer to see is for us to stay below 153, basically below the daily 55. So I'd like to short from there as long as it looks like we're finding resistance in that area. Otherwise, I don't really want to play in the middle here until we get back up to the daily 200 or perhaps the WR1. WR1 to the daily 200 gives us enough range on our stop to where when we're hitting back down to the 4-hour EMAs, we can move our stop and be at 1-to-1 there. So I want to trade short below the daily 55 or between WR1 and the daily 200. Okay, Euro JPY, we had a nice run north last week. Of course, the majority of that spurned on by the Greek deal. So I will look for a pullback basically to 137.50, which is going to be in play with MR1 and the 4-hour 55, and look for a subsequent long there. Of course, we definitely want to see the entry be above MR1 there. But out of the Euro pairs, if we're going to be looking to long, this would be the pair that I look to do it on. Okay, let's take a look at AUD JPY. You can see that the fib is last week low to high. So we're right around the 61.8% fib. Right now it's at 95.50, which we could see price turn around from there, but I'm thinking unless that happens with this candle, we're probably going to move down a little bit more. It looks like this pair may be starting its range a bit. You can see that we failed to get up to the previous high this week, or last week, excuse me. So I'll be looking for this pair to start ranging, which means if we do get below the 78.6 fib, that's not really going to take longs off the table for me. What I would like to see is either the shorter trade is look for basically the monthly pivot or 95 to hold, and then if we trade above or get a signal above 95.30, that gives us enough room to the 4-hour 55, which in if we're setting up our range is kind of a pivot point for price. You can see we're here and we're about in line, pretty close to the same place there. If we're forming our range, that's pretty much going to be close to the center of it. And you can also see the super convergence zones previously in the 50% fib. So we're looking at a range basically from 94.50, we've got the daily EMAs just above that pretty much, up to basically 97. So that's going to be the area where I'll look for longs at the bottom, of course, and shorts at the top. Now the bias would be to break the range to the upside. So currently, for right now, I'll look to half stake at the top until we break it, and then full stake towards the bottom. If I trade in the middle, like this area, if it looks like it's going to hold, maybe 3/4 stake, I'm going to trade from there. Okay, AUD USD, definitely looking a little bit different than AUD JPY. could be looking to continue the trend here if price does break lower. However, I'm going to need a pullback for entry, and I'd like to see price retest basically 77. So where the 4-hour 55 is now and the 50% fib, that's a little bit above, around 77.20-ish is where we're going to be at. So look for price to push into that area, and then for our entry to short to be just below 77 or maybe significantly below it, 20 or 30 pips. I'm not real worried about re-breaking the weekly pivot back to the downside. The area look to break is going to be pretty much our current low. We'll have to see what price does around there if we are in a short trade, whether we need to take profit there or not. All right, New Zealand dollar versus the US dollar moved lower again last week. So this is a fib from last week's high to the current low. Price moving a little bit quicker than the EMAs still. So I'm looking for a pullback to the 61.8% fib. The 4-hour 55 should move down pretty close to that area for us to be able to higher stop behind. May even want to be above, probably likely want to be above WR1 and look for a short below that 61.8% fib. Okay, USD CAD, I fibbed the last 2 weeks here, low to high, looking for a long. We've basically broken back up above 124, so it may be likely that we reestablish the range that we had a couple months ago. So here I'm going to look to long basically the 123.80 to 124 area. So it's going to be right around our 61.8% fib in the super convergence zone. And USD JPY, we've broken 125, which of course if you take a look at the monthly, not surprisingly is a very important area. So earlier in the week, short term, we'll see how price reacts to that, to 125, and potentially we have a long signal from there if we push down into it or break slightly below and then move back up above 125 or start to move away from it. Of course, that should give us a good signal to long. If we do break below it, it shouldn't be a problem. I'm basically going to look for reaction around the 78.6 fib, which is also a midterm fib, weekly support. It's a little bit above 124, basically the 124.20 area. The 4-hour 200 will be moving up into that area, and I think we can hide our stop basically down here in this area. 124 should provide pretty good support and resistance. That being said, if we come screaming back down here, we may hit 124, and that may be our area to look for an entry off of. Right here, we're looking at Euro USD on the weekly. You can see that I fibbed the weekly down move here that we have, and if you look at our most recent completed week, we didn't really break anything. In fact, this looks like it's still a little, still very bearish. You can see that we didn't close above the 23.6 fib. We had MR1 there that basically we got burned at. That's the daily 200, so we haven't even made it up there yet. However, if we take a look at the 4-hour, I do have last week fibbed low to high, so bullish, because we are hanging around this pocket of EMAs here, and potentially we can find support at the daily 200, and if we break back above basically 111.22, we can see a retest of this level to potentially move higher. Again, this would definitely be a movement based on the Greek deal. So the question is, do we have a small amount of sellers and mostly profit taking, which drove price back to this level, or do we have stronger selling here and we're likely to see continued selling? Of course, I think at some point we're likely to see continued selling, but in the short term, it may be that we move up and we get another test here before we get our move that breaks the daily 55 to the downside. So trading options here, what I'm looking at is basically, here's pretty much my line in the sand. If we stick above it, I'll look for entries above 111.22 to trade back up to WR1. If we break below it, I'll look for, of course, attempt to move back above it and a failure, and then a subsequent short entry. All right, that's gonna do it for me for the beginning of the week. I will catch you guys later, and happy trading.